Welcome to SGT Times Explainer. I am Mehak Bhardwaj from the Faculty of Dental Sciences. Today, we'll discuss the mystery, tragedy, and allure of the world's most famous shipwreck. The Titanic and the Titanic's ruins sit deep beneath the ocean's surface, separated by 1,600 feet and a staggering 111 years of history. The world's everlasting obsession with the Titanic's terrible story, however, recently gave rise to a new disaster, when the catastrophic implosion of a submarine heading for the ship's ultimate burial place cruelly killed 5 lives. While the huge Atlantic Ocean is home to innumerable wrecks, the Titanic stands out as a merely one chapter in long history of maritime tragedies, when the infamous iceberg collision killed the Titanic and 1,517 passengers on her maiden voyage in 1912. Yet, over and again, it is the Titanic's fascination that draws visitors in. Its story has inspired literally masterpieces, filmmaking, and a vibrant tourist sector with enthralling museums and exhibitions that draw millions of visitors year after year. And for some, there have been excursions to see the wreckage firsthand. So, what is it about Titanic that captivates our collective imagination? Let's take a look at the Titanic disaster and why it's so ingrained in our minds even today. Where was the Titanic in 1912? According to Britannica, the profitable and intensely competitive transatlantic passenger sector experienced strong competition between renowned ships, companies such as White Star and Cunard throughout the early 1900s. Cunard was prepared to increase its market share in 1907 with the introduction of 2 highly awaited ships, the Lusitania and the Mauretania, slated to enter the service later that year. Because of their planned speed, these passenger ships drew a lot of attention, eventually smashing transatlantic trip records. In response, White Star's chairman, J. Bruce Ismay, allegedly met with William Perry, who supervised the Belfast shipbuilding business Harland and Wolff, which built the majority of White Star's boats. They devised a strategy to build a class of big ocean liners known for their lavish amenities rather than focusing only on the speed. Following that, the decision was taken to construct 3 great ships, the Olympic, the Titanic, and the Britannic. The Titanic's construction began on March 31, 1909, after the earlier start of its sister ship, the Olympic. These amazing warships were constructed side by side on a specially engineered gantry that could accommodate their unparalleled. The Titanic included 4 elevators, a swimming pool, and a large first-class dining salon. According to Britannica, its second-class accommodations were equivalent to those found on other ships, and its third-class facilities, while modest, nonetheless provided reasonable comfort. In terms of safety features, the Titanic had 16 compartments with doors that could be opened from the bridge, allowing water to be contained in the event of a hull breach. Despite being waterproof, the bulkheads were not sealed at the top. The Titanic's architects claimed that 4 compartments could be flooded without endangering the ship's buoyancy, leading many to assume it was unsinkable. The Titanic's history first voyage began on April 10, 1912, when she set sail from Southampton, England, heading for New York City. Captain Edward J. Smith, known as the Millionaire's Captain, owing to his popularity among affluent passengers, commanded the ship, which gained the moniker Millionaire's Special. Several iceberg warnings were communicated to the bridge by the Titanic's radio operators, Jack Phillips and Harold Bridge, during the ship's voyage. However, other critical communications were not sent, including a Mizaba warning concerning an ice field. On April 14, around 11:40 p.m., an iceberg was sighted, and the ship attempted to sail away from it eventually crashed with it. The collision destroyed many compartments, thus sealing the ship's destiny. Distress signals were transmitted, and they were received by the Carpathia, which was more than 58 nautical miles distant. Despite the efforts of other ships, notably the Olympics assistance arrived too late. On the sinking deck, the musicians. According to the report, once lifeboats were deployed, the priority order was to evacuate women and children first. Despite having more than enough lifeboats, the Titanic's capacity fell short, and several boats were launched at less than their maximum capacity owing to worries about the strength of the davits. In lifeboats, only 705 people were saved, leaving many passengers behind. The Titanic's musicians played music to console the passengers during the evacuation. The precise length of their performance and the last song they played are unknown. Unfortunately, no one survived the sinking. Water swamped the lower decks as the crisis worsened, sparking panic among the passengers. When several guys attempted to board the lifeboat 14, an officer fired his revolver. The radio operator's distress cries indicated the ship's precarious situation. The stern of the Titanic lifted out of the water as it sunk, straining the middle. Only 3 collapsible lifeboats remained at the end. Captain Smith freed the crew, indicating that everyone was on their own. The ship was split in half, with the bow sinking first. It took the bow around 6 minutes to reach the ocean floor. The stern temporarily steadied before rinsing once again and eventually plunging vertically. At 2:20 a.m., the ship vanished beneath the waves, with the remaining air in the stern imploding due to the pressure. Hundreds of people were stranded in the freezing water, but lifeboats were hesitant to return to save them due to overpopulation. Most of the persons in the water had died from the intense cold by the time they arrived. Over 1,500 people died as a result of the unfortunate consequence. The crew was responsible for around 700 deaths, while third-class passengers suffered the greatest number of casualties. Only roughly 174 of the approximately 710 passengers, third-class passengers, survived. It was later determined that the accusations of the steerage passengers being denied access to lifeboats were mostly false. However, because there was no public notice and traversing the ship's intricate architecture was difficult, numerous third-class passengers were ignorant of the seriousness of the situation until it was too late. Furthermore, many women preferred to stay with their husbands and boys, decreasing their odds of survival even further. After most of the lifeboats had been launched, several passengers from the lower decks made their way to the upper deck. Now, when was the Titanic discovered? When the Titanic sank, it garnered widespread media coverage, thanks in part to the ship's marketing and her rich passengers. However, the actual wreckage was not discovered until 1985, roughly 650 kilometers from the Canadian shore. The wreckage of the ship was discovered at an incredible depth of nearly 12,500 feet below the sea level. The discovery of the Titanic's wreckage reawakened popular interest in the ship. Park Stephenson, a Titanic historian, noted that the wreck is a valuable memorial to catastrophe and contains crucial undiscovered stories. In an interview, he stated that there is still a lot to learn from the wreckage because he was the final surviving witness to the accident. The first dive to examine the debris and unearth its unknown stories took place in July 1986. However, it was only recently that the first publicly released video footage of the Titanic's ultimate resting location became accessible. displaying the airy sight of the Titanic's final resting spot. Why does the Titanic remain our morbid favorite? According to a survey, the Titanic's sinking has gripped the public's imagination for more than a century. The tragedy of the lost ocean liner has stayed prominent in popular culture since her catastrophic collision with an iceberg in 1912. Throughout the years, many works such as films, novels, plays, and documentaries have referred to the Titanic, adding to its enduring legacy. According to Robert Thompson, a pop culture specialist, the Titanic's constant recounting is due to reasons such as its high society passengers, the ship's exceptional speed for her time, the massive loss of life, and the boat of being unsinkable. The existence of telegraph service on board aided in the speedy broadcast of the news of the disaster, allowing the tale to travel throughout the world. The sinking of the Titanic occurred at a critical juncture in radio history, and the night of the catastrophe is remembered as a crucial event in the early days of radio transmission. The availability of telegraph services as well as the famous passengers aboard the ship led to the tragedy's global effect. During his visit to the Titanic exhibition in Hamburg, US director James Cameron, director of the film Titanic, touches a replica of the ship's ruin. The discovery of the Titanic's wreckage on the ocean floor, almost 2 miles deep in 1985, generated renewed interest in the ship. Furthermore, James Cameron's 1997 blockbuster film and the centenary anniversary of the Titanic's disaster in 2012 reignited popular interest in the ship. The Titanic's narrative has been packaged and recounted in many mediums throughout the decades, cementing its place as one of the most infamous maritime tragedies in history. According to Abret Mackenzie, a professor and novelist, a big element of the Titanic's continuing attraction originates from the original tragedy's blend of hubris and grandeur. The loss of many lives, the belief in the ship's unsinkability, and the presence of prominent people on board all add to the event's continued intrigue. Mackenzie also claims that the passage of more than a century since the Titanic's demise has contributed to the ship's attractiveness. The paucity of new first-hand testimonies make it difficult for future generations to completely comprehend the gravity of the catastrophe, adding to its enigma. The fascination with the Titanic tourism is consistent with the wider idea of dark tourism, in which people are drawn to locations connected with death, misery, and suffering. Mackenzie attributes the rise of dark tourism to increasing travel alternatives and the impact of media that focuses on such areas. Mackenzie speculates that events such as the war in Ukraine or the advent of new places of sorrow, such as the Chernobyl disaster, might rekindle interest in gloomy tourism. According to the research, the impact of COVID-19 epidemic remains undetermined, since consumers may favor more traditional ways of relaxation and escape. That's all for today in SGT Times Explainer. Thanks for watching.